Impeaching the president. The latest on why some congressional Democrats are backing away from the push to impeach. With terror threats around the world, a guide on how to make sure you stay safe while traveling abroad. And how functional medicine treats the root of health problems, not just the symptoms. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation.
The Democratic push to impeach the president may be losing steam. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup.
And I'm Jenna Browder. He is just not worth it. That's how Speaker Nancy Pelosi's take on impeaching President Trump, telling the Washington Post impeachment is divisive to the country and that she just doesn't think they should go down that path.
CBN News Capitol Hill correspondent Abigail Robertson has the latest reaction to Pelosi's public opposition to impeachment from fellow Democrats. Abigail?
Thanks, John and Jenna. The Democratic messaging on impeachment has been clear for quite some time, but for the first time, Nancy Pelosi is making her stance against impeachment public, and it's a strategy that left some Democrats grasping at straws.
I don't know. It's really hard. She's a very smart speaker.
Calling the president ethically and intellectually unfit for office, Speaker Nancy Pelosi told the Washington Post she is, quote, not for impeachment.
I'm sure she had reasons for what she said.
The speaker has been very consistent on this point.
The now public approach could help insulate Democrats from future criticism if the party does move forward with impeachment.
We should never proceed with impeachment for political reasons, and we should never avoid moving forward with impeachment for political reasons.
But not all Democrats are gelling with Speaker Pelosi's message.
There will be another vote on impeachment.
Congressman Al Green intends to bring articles of impeachment to the House floor for a third time, the first with Democrats in the majority.
But the other thing is, it's not going to pass the Senate.
Illinois Democrat Jan Schakowsky says a House vote is futile.
If we do impeachment, it's going to suck all the air out of the entire message that we have.
For now, Democrats are taking a wait-and-see approach to ousting President Trump.
We're expecting the Mueller report pretty soon.
That will be largely driven by the results of the Mueller investigation.
Republican Senator Lindsey Graham says he agrees.
I think when the Mueller report comes out, to me, hopefully that'd be the definitive word on any impropriety by the campaign.
But that could leave Democrats waiting until the next election.
We need to get rid of Donald Trump, and I don't think impeaching in the House is going to do it, and so we need to do it by the 2020 election.
And if Mueller's report doesn't change the way the wind blows, Democrats may have to adjust their sails.
And one could imagine a president who committed a felony and the House simply decided for the good of the country it wasn't an important felony, it was just a mistake or something we can deal with after a presidential term.
And in response to Speaker Pelosi's comments, some Republicans are now questioning why Democrats issued 81 document requests from people associated with President Trump if they are not already planning on proceeding with impeachment. Reporting from Capitol Hill, I'm Abigail Robertson.
Thanks, Abby. Well, Jenna Ellis is a constitutional law attorney and a member of the Trump 2020 Advisory Board. She joins us now. Jenna, what's your thinking about the reasoning behind Nancy Pelosi's comments about impeachment, and also why go public with this?
Yeah, so two things. From a constitutional perspective, clearly the Democrats have no sufficient legal basis to genuinely use the impeachment process against the president. We've seen that there's been nothing over the last 2.5 years that's come out to actually give them a sufficient reason in order to file impeachment papers. This shouldn't be a political tactic. It's vested in the Constitution if there is a legitimate reason. We haven't seen any of that. But second, I think that she knows that this is something that if it's a political tactic, is definitely not going to go through the Senate. It's not going to be any sort of victory for them. So it will look like the Democrats are simply just stalling and they're trying to be the party of opposition rather than trying to be the party that will bring everyone together for 2020. So I think she's coming out trying to say this in order to look forward to 2020.
To get out ahead of it.
And to get out ahead of it, absolutely.
Jenna, do you think this is a calculated strategy that, if Bob Mueller doesn't come up with what they're hoping he comes comes up with, this gives them some sort of breathing room.
A little bit, and I think we're seeing that with the Nadler subpoenas and how the House committees are now trying to take over the investigation from Mueller, because they're seeing that really nothing is forthcoming with that. And I think that once his report is actually issued, we're going to see that there's really nothing sufficient that will be against President Trump, because nothing has come out in the last couple of years. And so with the Democrats wanting to move forward, I think this is a way for them to pivot into their messaging and to try to bring more legitimacy to the House oversight committees and those subpoenas, even though that's really just a political tactic.
Jenna, what happens if Mueller's report doesn't point directly to any kind of impropriety on part of the campaign?
Then I think the American people should want and require the Democrats to move on, because they're really looking at an outcome-based agenda here and wanting something that is politically motivated for them, rather than being truthful and wanting fact-finding and sincerely saying, okay, if Mueller didn't uncover anything, then he's done his job. We can close the investigation and for the good of the country move on. That's not what they're wanting. They are wanting an outcome-based to simply hate President Trump and to get voters in 2020 to vote against him. And I think the American people really need to see through that political tactic and require that the Democrats actually do the job they were elected for, which is not simply to hate the president.
Between impeachment, the anti-Semitic resolution last week, the Green New Deal, all of these issues, there's a lot of division right now, Jenna, in the Democratic Party. Do you think, how do you see this playing out in 2020? What do you think will be the effect?
Yeah, I think that the Democratic Party is moving so far left that we, especially as Christians, have to look at the legitimate role of government in society. And if we look at Micah 6:8, we see that the Bible tells us that the good for society is to promote good and restrain evil. And we see that a legitimate government is to preserve and protect the rights that God gives us, not our government. So as the Democrats are moving further left and they're looking at socialism, they're looking at this structure of value that's not based simply on being human beings made in the image of God, but other man-made value factors, we as Christians need to recognize that that's not a legitimate role of government, and we need to put our vote, which is a primary obligation, I think, of Christians in this country, to vote our values and to make sure that we are voting for the party and the people who will uphold the truth while they're in office. And that's why I'm very proud to be a member of the Trump 2020 Advisory Board.
Jenna Ellis, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Well, bipartisan support for grounding Boeing 737 MAX 8 planes is growing here in Washington tonight after this weekend's deadly crash in Ethiopia.
There is no reason for American flyers to be less safe. Other countries are ahead of us in air safety if they ground these planes, and we fail to do so. The 737 MAX 8 should be immediately grounded until the FAA can assure us that they are safe.
Well, I think out of an abundance of caution and frankly common sense, it makes sense to ground an aircraft that's been involved in two very tragic accidents in only 6 months. The Senate has a responsibility to help oversee our aircraft industry, and this is something I think ought to be done.
And U.S. carriers Southwest and American are still using the 737 MAX 8, but the list of countries banning the Boeing plane continues to grow. Today, the UK, France joined China, Australia, Germany, and a handful of other places, no longer allowing the 737 MAX 8 to fly in their airspace. A couple dozen airlines have also temporarily suspended flights on the specific plane as the investigation into the weekend's crash continues.
Well, the United States is bringing home all embassy and diplomatic staff from Venezuela. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo noting the deteriorating situation in the country in a tweet announcing their removal. He says having personnel on the ground has become a, quote, constraint on U.S. policy. The U.S. supports opposition leader Juan Guaido and the country's legislature in an ongoing battle to oust President Nicolas Maduro, claiming Maduro stole the most recent elections.
Well, the socialist country is facing an economic mess. Its currency is now in free fall with prices skyrocketing. A month's wages in Venezuela now equals about $4.
So how are Venezuelans making it? Chuck Holton went to the border town of Cucuta, Colombia to find out.
Imagine if your paycheck got cut by 90% every 3 to 6 months. That's the world Venezuelans have been living in since hyperinflation took hold in their country in 2016. The Venezuelan bolivar is now the least valued currency in the world, with black market exchange rates off the charts, over 4 million bolivars to the dollar and sinking fast. That means starving Venezuelans have to do whatever they can to survive.
I was just here talking to my Venezuelan friend Roberto Sanchez, and I asked him if he had any Venezuelan money that he could show me. And so he ran off for a second, and he came back and brought me this stack of bills, this stack of money, look at that, and handed it to me and said, take it. The real scary question is, how do people survive when you can have all the money in the world and it literally won't buy you a thing?
Unfortunately, the people who cross this bridge aren't just looking for food and medicine. What they're searching for is hope.
Jaime Ayala works helping sick Venezuelans get care in Colombia because the medical care in his country is almost non-existent. His wife Esperanza works with him.
We see children sleeping in the streets. There is just so much need. People are in distress because there is no medicine at all. So we try to help get their needs met.
So this is the illegal way to get across from Venezuela into Colombia. It's called La Trocha. These guys are bringing products either into Colombia to sell or back into Venezuela, things that aren't available there, things like tires, things like medicines. Coming across from Venezuela, we're seeing a lot of scrap metal that they sell over in the Colombian side. We see things like copper wire because people are ripping the wires out of the walls and wrapping them up and bringing them over here to sell just to get enough money to eat.
Leonel Castillo and his wife Sara work with their church to help the poorest migrants coming to Colombia.
The wealthiest Venezuelans have already escaped to Spain or Miami. The middle class is going to Ecuador or Chile. But the poorest and most vulnerable are coming to Cucuta.
I took a walk in downtown Cucuta late one night, and there were hundreds of women selling the only thing they had to sell, their bodies. These 3 teen girls I met have been working on the street for the past year, starting before 2 of them were even 18. They say it's terrible work, but better than starving.
It's bad because we're always getting guys who are drunk and sometimes they abuse us. We come out here every night, but sometimes don't get any business because there are so many women out here.
This is no kind of life. It's tiring, it's ugly, but what can you do when you have no future?
It's amazing how many similarities I've noticed between what's going on in Venezuela and what I was seeing in Syria. Now, the stuff in Syria was definitely worse, but it's similar in some ways in that just the level of desperation. You have people that literally just they run out of options. And one of the best ways you could illustrate that is by meeting prostitutes who are actually mothers with families and husbands back in Venezuela, but they're coming over here to Cucuta and selling their bodies for just a little bit of money in order to make enough money to survive. And so, before you go judging, you might ask yourself, just how far would you go to make sure that your children could eat at night, to make sure that your children could get the medical care that they needed?
Castillo and his family are doing what they can to help some of these girls get out of this life and give them a hope and a future.
It's sad, yes, but it's an opportunity for God to manifest himself in the works of his people. And we know that their most basic needs are spiritual. What they need is Jesus.
Chuck Holton, CBN News, Cucuta, Colombia.
Thanks, Chuck. The State Department is warning Americans visiting India to use more caution traveling in the region, especially women. The department cites an increase in terrorism and a rise in sexual crimes for the new warning. The growth of terror around the world means increased risk while traveling. Caitlin Burke brings us a look at some useful tips on how to stay safe while out of the country.
No, this isn't a movie, but it's not quite reality either.
Who's a Christian here? Who's an American? Raise your hand. Who's an American?
Here at the Center for Personal Protection and Safety in Reston, Virginia, instructors help frequent travelers learn how to spot trouble and respond to anything from a terrorism attack to pickpocketing.
We're living in a pretty extreme world environment right now. There have always been risks, but we're seeing areas that traditionally have been pretty safe to travel to that, as you look at extremism and terrorism, areas like Paris, Nice, France, Belgium, even London, we're seeing other types of risk that historically just haven't been there.
Sandy participated in today's high-risk travel training course in preparation for a trip to Europe.
We're already kind of planning how will we carry ourselves, what will we carry with us, how will we respond to crowds and all those kinds of things. So it's very useful for us right now.
Randy Spivey is the CEO and founder of the Center for Personal Protection and Safety. He points out that situational awareness is needed by more than just frequent travelers.
If you think about it, the skills we talked today apply when you travel, but they apply when you walk around Norfolk, Virginia as well, because we're teaching how do you recognize potential warning signs before they occur.
Knowing how to react in a crisis can pay off in the rare event that you find yourself in one.
There's a huge difference in how people that are trained versus untrained respond in a crisis. An untrained individual, if they find themselves in that crisis, they're going to be startled, afraid, and then more than likely they're going to freeze and lock up. A trained individual is going to they'll be startled and afraid, but then they're going to recognize, oh, I have some options, and they're able to move with purposeful action.
The Center for Personal Protection and Safety uses a training method called stress inoculation. Through realistic role play, participants must respond the way they might if they were actually in a crisis. Reactions include increased blood pressure, feeling shaky, and trouble putting together thoughts.
With the intensity of his voice, it became more and more real. So it really did get more stressful with his continued fidgeting and the gun and the high pitch, and I forgot in a lot of ways that it was just a training. It felt real.
One scenario involved terrorists demanding that Christians raise their hands. According to Spivey, this is where people often make a mistake.
They feel like that they have to answer that. To answer it no would be denying their faith. To answer it yes, they wind up getting shot. And so what we try and teach people is, it's not denying your faith to not answer that question, or to answer it with something other than yes or no. You might be able to respond with, I am a person of faith. Or, I'm so scared right now, I'm having a hard time even thinking about what you're asking me.
Spivey believes that refusing to confirm that you're a Christian doesn't deny your faith. It takes away the legitimacy of the person asking the question. That initial capture phase of a hostage situation is the most dangerous.
You have individuals that are trying to come in and take control of the situation, and they're not in control.
One of you's gonna die today. Who's it gonna be?
Spivey says to remember these 3 C's to help you get out of trouble. Calm, connect, and capitalize. Be a calming influence, especially at first. Connect with your captor on a personal level to become more than an object. And then capitalize by encouraging a negotiated release.
Well, what's your reason? Why shouldn't I kill you?
I'm a mother.
You're a mother.
I have a family.
You have a family. Well, that's a good start.
In today's world, it's about reaching a balance between 2 extremes, paranoia and oblivion. Being somewhere in the middle might just save your life. Caitlin Burke, CBN News, Reston, Virginia.
Celebrities charged with cheating. More on a stunning college admission case when we come back.
Our nature as a country.
To make the world a better place.
Literally, we felt the earth shaking.
The Christian Broadcasting Network presents To Life, how Israeli volunteers are changing the world.
This film needs to be seen by everyone.
I was in tears.
Now you can own the inspiring documentary To Life on DVD.
There is blood on our hands if we know and we walk away.
I'm so grateful that this film was made.
To Life can be yours for a gift of $10 or more. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
We know that every minute counts to save life.
It'll bless Israel, but it'll also bless all the friends of Israel.
Discover the untold story of how Israeli volunteers are making the world a better place. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com to get your copy today.
Region's first ROTC graduate student.
The Justice Department calls a major bribery investigation the largest college admission prosecution in its history.
Dozens, including coaches and parents, and even some Hollywood stars, are under indictment. Amber Strong has the latest on the case.
It's known as Operation Varsity Blues. U.S. prosecutors on Wednesday indicted 50 people in an expansive bribery campaign involving admission to some of the nation's most elite schools. According to the DOJ, testing administrators, 9 coaches, and 33 parents exchanged $25 million over 8 years in order to manipulate test scores and athletic abilities. The alleged mastermind, 58-year-old William Singer, would bribe administrators to change test scores or allow an accomplice to take the test instead of the student. Singer would also pay coaches to guarantee a client's spot on a team. Caught up in the scandal, Full House actress Lori Loughlin and Felicity Huffman of TV's Desperate Housewives.
This case is about the widening corruption of elite college admissions through the steady application of wealth combined with fraud. There can be no separate college admissions system for the wealthy, and I'll add that there will not be a separate criminal justice system either.
Universities on that list include Yale, Georgetown, and UCLA. Prosecutors say they have no indication that the universities knew anything that was going on, and in most cases, not all the students were left in the dark as well. But they reiterate that this is an open investigation and more charges could come. Amber Strong, CBN News, Washington.
Why some say something called functional medicine is the future when it comes to treating disease. That story when we come back.
Tikkun Olam.
This is our nature as a country.
To make the world a better place.
Literally, we felt the earth shaking.
The Christian Broadcasting Network presents To Life, how Israeli volunteers are changing the world.
This film needs to be seen by everyone.
I was in tears.
Now you can own the inspiring documentary To Life on DVD.
There is blood on our hands if we know and we walk away.
I'm so grateful that this film was made.
To Life can be yours for a gift of $10 or more. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
We know that every minute counts to save life.
It'll bless Israel, but it'll also bless all the friends of Israel.
Discover the untold story of how Israeli volunteers are making the world a better place. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com to get your copy today.
Welcome back. Functional medicine is a new approach to treating disease. It takes away the emphasis on your symptoms and focuses on the root cause of what's actually bothering you.
Yeah, the big picture. CBN News medical reporter Lori Johnson introduced us to a woman who suffered for years until she found a doctor who treated her with this new method.
These days, Cindy Tedrow enjoys life, like playing with her dogs. That wasn't the case when she faced horrific health problems.
I would pray, Lord, if you want me, take me. Just take me.
For most of her adult life, she suffered from infections, fatigue, and pain.
My legs felt like they were cement, and it took that much effort to pick them up and move.
She also struggled with hormone issues and obesity.
I could not lose weight. I could not lose weight. No matter what I tried, I could not lose weight.
Her seizures made life unpredictable.
I would make a commitment and then I would have to cancel. And I know people didn't understand that. And it was so hard.
Seizures eventually forced her to stop driving and teaching.
And I loved my job. I loved my job. I just couldn't do it anymore. The hardest thing is I couldn't go to church a lot of times. And that really, really was hard.
On Cindy and her husband.
I could see the fear on his face. And I could hear the fear in my mom's voice, too.
In searching for answers, she visited 20 doctors and took numerous medications. Nothing helped.
They would send me from one specialist to another specialist, and I would have medication. They would give me medication for that particular symptom. And so at one time I was in 22 prescriptions. And getting worse. I was just getting worse.
With nothing to lose, she decided to try a different approach. She went to the Cleveland Clinic's Functional Medicine Center, led by Dr. Mark Hyman.
Functional medicine is a new way of thinking about disease that gets to the root cause. It doesn't focus so much on symptoms as the question of why you have those symptoms.
Cindy got better, and fast.
In a very short time, she only lost an enormous amount of weight, but was able to end her seizures, to recover her energy, to end her brain fog, and to be engaged in her life again.
An estimated 80% of all health problems are caused by an unhealthy diet, too much sugar and processed foods, and not enough vegetables and healthy fats. Once Cindy started eating the prescribed anti-inflammatory diet, she lost 80 pounds.
The weight just melted away. It just melted away. It's not hard. It is not hard. I basically just stick to real meat, real vegetables. I have to stay away from the carbs.
Functional medicine doctors often recommend supplementing a healthy diet with things like vitamin D, fish oil, and a probiotic.
The gut microbiome has been linked to depression and cancer and heart disease and diabetes and obesity and autoimmune diseases and allergies and asthma. So that doesn't make sense given our current model of describing disease. When you go to the cardiologist, they don't ask you about your gut microbiome, right? They want to know if they should put you on a statin or a beta blocker or an aspirin, and not think about why is there inflammation, why is there high blood pressure, why is your cholesterol abnormal, and fix that.
Functional medicine doctors advise their patients to take steps to feel more peaceful because stress is at the root of so many health issues.
Thoughts, stress, exercise, sleep, and also community and connection, because many of us are isolated and many of us are lonely, and that promotes disease. And in a faith-based world, it's really about connection, community, belonging, meaning, purpose. Those are also ingredients for health.
They told us about meditation, and I didn't do meditation, but I was already praying, and that has made a tremendous difference.
The medical world pays attention to results like Cindy's,
which is something we see routinely in functional medicine. It's something that often traditional physicians are surprised at because these are patients that they've tried for decades to try to help and mitigate symptoms. We don't go for symptoms, we go for causes.
Compared to the conventional approach of simply relying on big pharma, functional medicine often focuses on significant lifestyle changes. While that's more responsibility and discipline, people like Cindy Tedrow, who've tried both, say the extra effort pays off in the long run. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
And for more health news from Lori, you can watch her show, Healthy Living. It comes on every Tuesday night at 9:30 p.m. on the CBN News Channel. And you can find out where to watch that at cbnnewschannel.com. Well, that's going to do it for tonight's Faith Nation.
Have a great evening.